President Trump is canceling all executive orders signed by former President Joe Biden using the Autopen. Trump made the announcement on Truth Social. President Trump said approximately 92% of documents signed by the former president made use of the Autopen. Trump wrote, quote, "Any document signed with the Autopen is hereby terminated and of no further force or effect. The Autopen is not allowed to be used if approval is not specifically given by the President of the United States." Trump said Biden was not involved in the Autopen process, and if he says he was, he will be brought up on charges of perjury. Joining us now to discuss this is Gerard Filitti, senior counsel with the Lawfare Project. Gerard, thank you for joining us today. Number one question here is President Trump's announcement on Truth Social enough to immediately invalidate these documents?
It is if it's accompanied by his executive order directing that these Biden-era executive orders be canceled, be revoked. He certainly has the authority to do that, but he does need to actually reduce this to writing, not signed with an Autopen, through an executive order. That's perfectly valid.
So just to be clear, the president has unilateral authority to just declare documents signed through Autopen invalid.
It's not the Autopen. President Trump has the authority to revoke every single executive order that President Biden implemented. So he could, for example, issue an executive order of his own, revoking all of the, I believe it's 162 executive orders signed by President Biden with or without an Autopen. That is his legal prerogative. It doesn't matter whether or not they were signed with the Autopen. The new administration, the new president, has every legal authority to invalidate previous executive orders.
You know, some might worry legal challenges might follow, but since you're saying he has the authority, does that mean any legal challenges would be useless?
It depends on how detailed President Trump is his invalidation. He cannot legally, for example, retroactively invalidate them. So, for example, he can only invalidate these orders going forward. He can't go back in time and say that effective the moment President Biden signed something, it was not valid. That he does not have the legal authority to do. That would be legally challenged, and the challenge would probably be successful. So there are ways that if Donald Trump is too broad in his invalidation, it might result in a legal challenge. But going forward from today, from whatever date is Donald Trump signs this order as president, he can invalidate past orders going forward.
So this is a small thing, but I'm wondering if you can speak to where that 92% came from. There was a congressional inquiry into the Autopen. I mean, could today's move be the result of that, where that 92% estimate came from?
It's very likely that that is a result of a congressional inquiry, that Congress did hear details about President Biden's use of the Autopen. And we also have documentation, there's contemporary evidence with President Biden actually being photographed, for example, signing some executive orders. So we know that he did sign a number himself. But what Congress did uncover was evidence that the vast majority, some 92% apparently, of those executive orders were signed by an Autopen. Now, it's not illegal to use an Autopen when you're president to sign orders. The question is whether President Biden understood what he was authorizing when he and actually authorized the Autopen to be used instead of manually signing each document. That's a question about his capacity and his understanding, not the legality of an Autopen. So ultimately, what President Trump is saying is that 92% of the executive orders signed by President Biden, are unclear as to whether President Biden understood he was signing them.
Okay, speaking of which, could former President Biden be charged for perjury if he says he signed these documents in question?
Likely not, for a few reasons, one of which is I don't think that he's ever said he physically signed them himself. The issue is if perjury comes to people saying that they discussed what President Biden was signing with him, and he agreed that his signature can be used by Autopen. Those people might be charged with perjury if it turns out that President Biden did not understand what he was authorizing. So to put it simply, even if you're not signing a paper physically as president, you have to understand and give permission for your signature to be used by the Autopen. If someone is lying and says that President Biden gave his permission but never did, they could be charged with perjury.
All right, Gerard, final question. More broadly speaking, does a document signed through Autopen carry the same weight when a president himself physically signs a document?
It absolutely does. It has the same legal effect whether he signs a bill passed by Congress or an executive order. The only question is to whether the president understands and gives his permission for the use of Autopen. It can't be used without his consent. So that really is the issue that President Trump is getting at, that the congressional investigation was looking into, whether President Biden understood and was giving permission for the use of his pen.
Well, all right, Gerard, well said and very clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.